It's official there, British rock star Ozzy Osbourne has died at the age of 76. Black Sabbath legend Ozzy Osbourne, the Prince of Darkness, dead at the age of 76.
To the world, he was the Madman of Rock, the storm on stage, the scream that redefined metal, the Prince of Darkness. But when Ozzy Osbourne took his final bow, it wasn't the silence that stunned the world. It was the legacy he left behind.
The legacy of Ozzy will live on, not only in the music of Black Sabbath and his solo career, but the impact it had on other bands who took cues and were inspired by everything they did.
A final decision so unexpected, it shattered his family and rewrote the ending of rock's wildest story. What message did Ozzy leave, and why did it make them weep? When the world woke up to the news of Ozzy Osbourne's death, it felt like heavy metal itself had lost its heartbeat. The man who had seemed nearly indestructible and survived decades of controversy, health scares, and the brutal grind of fame was suddenly gone. But while fans mourned across generations, his family was left reeling for another reason entirely. Ozzy had left behind something extremely shocking, and to his family, his legacy wasn't just measured in records sold or stages rocked. It had been written into contracts, assets, royalties, and deals that no one outside his closest circle had ever fully understood. But the truth is, Ozzy's fortune is directly linked to the chaos he built, the empire he never stopped running from, and the legacy that almost destroyed him. Ozzy wasn't just successful, he was a global phenomenon. As co-founder and lead vocalist of Black Sabbath from 1968 to 1979, he helped create an entirely new genre of music: heavy metal. The band's breakthrough albums, like Paranoid and Master of Reality, weren't just commercial hits. They permanently redefined what rock could sound like, moving away from blues-based formulas and embracing darker, heavier, more aggressive themes. Their records became essential blueprints for generations of musicians who followed, and Ozzy's instantly recognizable voice became one of the most iconic sounds in music history. But even after his departure from Black Sabbath in 1979, Ozzy's career didn't slow down. If anything, it exploded. His solo debut, Blizzard of Oz, dropped in 1980 and delivered hits that proved he could thrive without his former band. And he didn't stop there. Ozzy remained at the top of the charts for decades, with singles that became radio staples and streaming mainstays. Between his work with Black Sabbath and his solo catalog, Ozzy Osbourne sold over 100 million albums worldwide, a number few artists in any genre have ever reached. And unlike many of his peers, his relevance never faded. He adapted to changes in the industry, embraced newer production styles, and constantly collaborated with younger artists without ever diluting his core identity. As luck would have it, Ozzy's effort didn't go unnoticed. He was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame twice, first in 2006 with Black Sabbath, and again in 2024 as a solo artist. He won multiple Grammy Awards across his career. In 2002, he received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and in 2014, MTV Europe honored him with its Global Icon Award, a title reserved only for artists who have left a lasting international impact. Perhaps one of the biggest accomplishments of his career was Ozzfest, the metal festival he and his wife Sharon launched in 1996. Not only did it give a stage to the next generation of heavy music, but it also became a juggernaut in its own right, grossing over $100 million across its run. For many younger fans, Ozzfest wasn't just a concert series, it was their introduction to metal, and Ozzy was its godfather. But most fans don't realize that Ozzy wasn't just a rocker who got lucky. He was a man who turned a genre into a business, a voice into a brand, and a chaotic career into one of the most profitable music legacies of the last 50 years. And although the Osbourne family had always lived large, after Ozzy's death, the full details of his fortune had not just his family, but the entire world in complete disbelief. The fortune he left behind. At the time of his death, Ozzy Osbourne's estimated net worth stood at around $220 million, a figure that combined both his personal earnings and joint assets with his wife and longtime manager, Sharon Osbourne. But what's most surprising isn't the number, it's how that fortune was built. Unlike many of his peers, Ozzy didn't just rely on album sales or live shows. Instead, he turned every phase of his career into a revenue stream and managed to stay financially relevant for over 5 decades. The foundation of Ozzy's wealth began, as expected, with music. From his early years with Black Sabbath to his decades-long solo career, Ozzy's catalog continued to generate millions in royalties annually. His classic albums are still streamed by millions of fans across the world. Between physical album sales in the 70s and 80s, digital downloads in the 2000s, and streaming in recent years, the royalties from his music, both as a solo artist and as part of Black Sabbath, remained one of the biggest sources of income throughout his life. But his real source of income came from touring. Ozzy didn't just perform shows, he built unforgettable events. His solo tours regularly sold out arenas and stadiums around the globe. Ozzfest quickly became a staple of the metal scene and sold over 5 million tickets across its lifespan. To Ozzy and Sharon, this event wasn't just a cultural moment, it was a major business venture. Sharon managed the logistics and branding, while Ozzy headlined many of the lineups. And together, the couple turned this festival into a multi-million-dollar machine. In the early 2000s, the Osbournes entered into a completely new financial lane with the launch of their reality television series, The Osbournes. The show aired from 2002 to 2005 and was a massive hit. In fact, it's often recognized as one of the first mainstream reality series to document the day-to-day life of a celebrity family. Its viewership soared, and so did the paychecks. By the later seasons, each family member reportedly earned over $5 million per season, making it one of the most lucrative reality deals of its time. But beyond the money, the show also revived interest in Ozzy's music for a younger generation who hadn't grown up with Black Sabbath or his early solo hits. Ozzy was also very smart about licensing and merchandise, which many rock artists of his generation ignored or underutilized. In fact, he became the first metal artist to surpass $50 million in merchandise sales alone. His image was everywhere, from t-shirts to action figures, posters, Halloween costumes, and even video games. Licensing deals also extended into gaming, with Ozzy-themed slot machines and appearances in popular franchises like Guitar Hero. These deals created an ongoing stream of passive income that continued to grow, even as his touring schedule slowed in later years. However, behind the scenes, Ozzy and Sharon made several real estate investments that added significantly to their wealth. The couple owned multiple luxury properties in California and the United Kingdom, including a historic estate in Buckinghamshire and high-end homes in Beverly Hills and Hancock Park. Some of these properties were sold off in recent years as part of downsizing plans, but many still remained in the family's portfolio, adding both value and stability to their long-term financial outlook. But Ozzy's fortune was no accident. It was the product of smart decisions, long-term partnerships, diversified income streams, and constant reinvention. He didn't just make money, he made moves. But success never comes free, and his came with a price far too great. Beneath the spotlight glow, there was a shadow Ozzy couldn't outrun. And while he became one of the most successful figures in rock history, he and his family paid a high price for the life they were living: the cost of fame and fortune. Ozzy Osbourne's success came with a spotlight that never turned off, and over time, that light began to burn. For all the wealth, influence, and awards he earned, the constant demands of fame quietly took a toll that even his fortune couldn't shield him from. When The Osbournes premiered in 2002, it became an instant cultural sensation. Millions of viewers tuned in each week to watch the chaotic, foul-mouthed, yet oddly endearing Osbourne family navigate daily life in their Beverly Hills mansion. But while the show made Ozzy even more famous, it also came at a personal cost. The series put a magnifying glass on the family's real-life struggles, from arguments to parenting issues, health scares, and moments of raw emotion. What had once been private was now broadcast around the world. Ozzy himself admitted later that he often felt lost during the filming, appearing dazed and confused, not just from editing, but from the stress of being constantly watched. The exposure made it nearly impossible for the family to maintain a sense of normalcy, and what started as a clever business move ended up putting stress on their relationships behind the scenes. But this stress only grew with public scrutiny. For years, Ozzy's health was a constant subject of media speculation. Every stumble, slurred word, or hospital visit was met with headlines questioning whether he was fit to perform or even to survive. While he had always been open about his struggles with addiction, the relentless focus on his personal issues made recovery even harder. His battles with alcohol and various illicit substances were decades long. He entered rehab multiple times, and it wasn't until later in life that he began speaking publicly about the depth of those struggles. Ozzy also faced challenges with the one person who mattered the most to him. He once credited his wife, Sharon Osbourne, with keeping him grounded during his darkest moments. He once said, "I wouldn't be alive, I wouldn't be singing. She saved my life every day." Still, the road wasn't easy. In the mid-2010s, in 2016, a revelation about an extramarital affair led to a highly public separation from Sharon. The scandal was widely covered and deeply personal, but somehow the couple reconciled, and in 2017 they renewed their wedding vows. But beyond the marital problems, Ozzy also dealt with mental health struggles that he rarely spoke about in his earlier years. In later interviews, he revealed that he had battled depression and disturbing thoughts since he was young. Even in moments of triumph, he often felt uncertain about his worth and talent, and an inner voice of doubt followed him well into his later years, despite having accomplished more than most artists ever dream of. Fame, for all it gave him, also cut him off from normal life. He constantly longed for simple experiences that he missed out on, like walking into a store without being recognized or going to dinner with his family without a camera following. At some point, he didn't feel like a real person anymore, but a product that everyone had a claim to. Perhaps most painful of all was how fame impacted his role as a father and husband. While Ozzy was deeply proud of his children, who also lived large parts of their lives in the public eye, he sometimes questioned how his lifestyle affected their upbringing. The chaotic household, the exposure on TV, and his own addiction struggles were not easy burdens to grow up around. And though the family remained close, there were scars, and Ozzy knew it. Unlike recent claims, not everything about Ozzy's legacy was about triumph or tragedy. There were plenty of controversies that followed him through the decades. Some were shocking, others were strange, and a few left even his most loyal fans questioning what was real and what was not. The scandals that never left him. Ozzy Osbourne's career was filled with musical milestones and cultural achievements, but just as unforgettable were the controversies that trailed him almost from the start. One of the most well-known incidents in rock history took place in 1982 during a concert in Des Moines, Iowa. In the middle of the show, someone threw what Ozzy believed was a rubber bat onto the stage. Known for dramatic antics and stage props, he picked it up and put it into his mouth, only to discover in horrifying fashion that it was, in fact, a real, live bat. Ozzy was rushed to the hospital immediately after the show and had to undergo a series of rabies shots. Though he later described the moment as an accident and a misunderstanding, the story took on a life of its own. It became both a defining moment in his public image and a permanent entry in the long list of rock and roll's wildest moments. That same year, Ozzy was at the center of another headline-grabbing controversy, this time in San Antonio, Texas. While reportedly intoxicated and dressed in Sharon's dress after she had hidden his clothes to stop him from going out, Ozzy urinated on the Alamo Cenotaph, a sacred monument honoring the defenders of the Alamo. The act was considered deeply offensive, especially in Texas, and resulted in Ozzy being banned from San Antonio for 10 years. The city eventually lifted the ban in 1992 after he made a formal public apology and donated to local historical preservation efforts. But the incident remained one of the most talked-about moments of his early solo career. Legal troubles also followed Ozzy into the late 1980s. In 1987, he was sued by the parents of a teenager who died under tragic circumstances after they claimed that Ozzy's song had played a role in the death. The lawsuit argued that his lyrics were dangerous and promoted inappropriate behavior. Ozzy and his legal team responded by stating clearly that the song was never intended to glorify inappropriate behavior, but was written as a warning. The court eventually dismissed the case, citing a lack of evidence and reinforcing artistic freedom under the First Amendment. Still, the controversy added to Ozzy's reputation as a dangerous influence, particularly in the eyes of conservative and religious groups. Those groups had long viewed Ozzy with suspicion. Throughout the 1980s and 90s, he was frequently accused of promoting Satanism, largely due to his dark imagery, haunting vocals, and lyrical references to evil, death, and the occult. Songs like Mr. Crowley and Black Sabbath fed the narrative, even though Ozzy consistently denied any connection to satanic themes. He often explained that his lyrics were theatrical, metaphorical, or rooted in horror storytelling, not spiritual doctrine. Still, the accusations stuck around. Some religious broadcasters labeled him a corrupting force on youth culture, but Ozzy never backed down. In interviews, he often joked about the claims, pointing out that he had been raised in a strict Catholic home and didn't even know what Satanism really meant. But the controversies didn't end there. In the early 2000s, Ozzy faced accusations of glamorizing dysfunction, pointing to the constant use of foul language and chaos that surrounded his performance. In fact, mental health experts and parenting groups debated whether his popularity was normalizing unstable behavior. Ozzy, meanwhile, remained largely unfazed. He had never claimed to be a role model, and his life was never intended to look polished. But after decades of surviving scandals, scrutiny, and pressure, Ozzy's story finally approached its quiet conclusion, and what followed after his death was both shocking and heartbreaking. The final chapter of a heavy metal giant. By the time Ozzy Osbourne entered the final stretch of his life, the world had already begun preparing itself for the inevitable. Years of public health battles and cancelled performances had signaled that the end was near. But when the moment actually came, it still felt surreal. After decades of defying expectations, Ozzy passed away quietly, but not without leaving a clear, lasting footprint on music history. Ozzy's health had been in decline for many years. Although the world only learned about it in 2020, he had actually been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease back in 2003. The degenerative neurological condition slowly impacted his balance, mobility, and speech, making live performances increasingly difficult. For a man who had built his career on movement, presence, and stage energy, the effects were both physically and emotionally taxing. And when he finally revealed the diagnosis publicly, it came with clarity and grace. But Parkinson's wasn't the only major health challenge Ozzy faced. Back in 2003, the same year he was diagnosed, Ozzy suffered a serious quad bike accident at his United Kingdom estate. The crash left him with multiple injuries and required surgeons to insert metal rods into his spine. But these rods were a ticking time bomb, because in 2019, he experienced a serious fall at home, which dislodged the implants and triggered a cascade of complications. Multiple surgeries followed, including one final operation in 2023 that effectively left him immobile. Walking unaided was no longer possible, and standing for long periods wasn't an option. By then, even holding a microphone became a challenge. Despite the pain and limitations, Ozzy didn't give up on the music. In 2025, he performed for the last time during a special farewell concert titled Back to the Beginning, held in Birmingham, the city where his journey first began. Seated on a throne, surrounded by longtime collaborators, and cheered by fans from every corner of the globe, he delivered a stripped-down performance that felt less like a show and more like a goodbye. After that final concert, Ozzy quietly retreated from public life. He returned to England, where he spent his final months surrounded by family, close friends, and music. He focused on peace, reflection, and preparing his legacy. He also reportedly listened to music daily, revisiting old records and unfinished demos, sometimes offering notes to collaborators and biographers. After his devastating death on the 22nd of July 2025, the tributes that followed were extremely emotional. Major names from across the music industry, and even younger artists, issued statements honoring Ozzy as a trailblazer, a creative force, and one of the greatest rock icons of all time. Many cited his authenticity and courage in speaking about addiction, mental health, and aging in the public eye. To musicians everywhere, he wasn't just the Prince of Darkness. He was proof that you could make mistakes, fight back, and still change the world. Even in death, Ozzy Osbourne remains present. His music continues to sell. His voice still echoes through speakers around the world, and his story continues to inspire. The Prince of Darkness may be gone, but his legacy is immortal. What's your favorite memory of Ozzy Osbourne? Drop your answers in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click on the next video on your screen, like this video, and subscribe to our channel for more updates.